Okay, we're going to go back to something that's very important at this point on dealing with surnames and given names or Christian names. The reason why we're doing this is because at times people keep on emailing us things, asking us questions on things we've already discussed in the videos. For us, that would seem strange after repeating it over and over and over, because a lot of the information is repetitive, is because we're dealing with at times an audience that is not comprehending the information from the truth versus fiction, fact versus fiction. And you cannot take something that's in truth a fact and make it a fiction without consenting to tell a lie and then trying to make that seem to be the truth. And so we're going over these words for that reason, so we hope we can bring clarity to things, because at times people are trying to get us to give them a solution using a fiction, and then they want the assurance of what was given to them under their Christian name, but they still want to hold on to the fiction in the process. And then they're telling us, but how am I going to live? And so we're not here to aid and abet that, because that would be a wager and that would be a bet, and we'd be aiding and abetting you if we told you you could carry and continue on with everything that you've accumulated in the fiction and say that you could keep it under that fiction and then get relief somehow. That'd be like being rewarded for an error or a lie or a mistake. So we're going to go to the word surname. And surname, and this is a Canadian Gauge dictionary, so I just want you to understand, we're not grabbing at books that you cannot find. And if we want to go on the part of whether or not we're using something on the jurisdiction of the soil of the Commonwealth or Canada, okay, then we're going to use this for the audience that basically would think that, oh, this wouldn't apply to Canada if we have a Canadian audience. And I know that a lot of our audience has been involved with something that would be considered to be under something that would have had British rule at one point, and we'll just have to understand that English belongs to England. So if you're using English wherever you are, then it has a domination over you, and you will find that more than not, most of your customs and laws, even in countries that do not speak English, are still using Roman or civil law to proceed with, such as China. So we'll go to surname, and in the definition under surname, it says name added to a person's real name. Now I hope that is about as simple as I can make this. It said that it is a name added to a person's real name. Well, then that would imply that the real name would be something that's not the same as the surname. Now we know that wouldn't be anything else other than the given name or the Christian name. So we'll flip over to Christian name. And I hope we're not acting like we're talking down to you here. I think at one point we just realized that most people just aren't listening. So we're going to try to say this over and over again until it finally sinks in. Christian name. Given name. It is so called from the tradition practiced in most Christian churches of formally giving the name to an infant at christening. Okay, so they gave a name. Your parents give you a name, that's a given name. That's what's on your birth document. That's what's made on the statement. Now, let's look at the word given. Very key word, right? Because it's a given name. Let's look at the definition of given. Given means stated, fixed, specified, assigned as a basis of calculating reasoning. Given name, a personal name given to a person as a child. So then the child's name is the given name. Are we understanding what's going on here? Now, man's world says they want the child's name in full. So they're going to add on a name that is in addition to the child's real name. well, then we'd be in the world of pretend at that point. Because if the given name is a fact, and the surname is a name added to the real name, well, then one's got to be fiction and one's got to be fact. One's got to be truth, one has to be fiction. One has to be grace, one has to be legal. The world that you're living in the legal is contrary to grace. An act of God is a miracle. An act of man is manufactured evidence, which is a fiction. That's called imagination. So we create imagination names all around the world that seems to have something to do with your national background. Christianity doesn't care about national background. We're all under one, under Christ, when you accept. But you can't be on both sides, even though your state-registered religion may say so. It is a wrong in law to lie. So we're going to go to the law under the word fact, under law of evidence. Now, I recommend anybody to get the Evidence Act out of their country, because this will give you a lot more clarity. But under the word fact, it says, a circumstance, event, or occurrence as it actually took place. Well, what actually took place? A child was born, it gets a given name. That's the actual event. A physical object or appearance as it actually exists or existed. An actual and absolute reality. Now we got the word real in there. That's a reality, which we already learned out of the definition for a given name, is a real name. A surname is not a real name. You just pretend to be that name. I'm going to pretend to be a Smith or a Taylor. Those are occupational names, as distinguished from mere supposition or opinion. A surname is just a reputation, what someone was reputed to be. It's just an allegation. It's an accusation. It's a charge. You're being charged to be that. Could a child have a reputation at birth? No. Law would protect the child. It says a truth as distinguished from a fiction or error. Are you going to have enough intelligence to understand the difference between a given, a fact, and an error? The surname is an error. The reason why the surname is an error is because it says that you can be a surety. It's an image of a man. Now we've created age on it. It's I'm age. Now they put a timeline on it. They gamble on how or what you're going to do with the use of a fictional, valuable piece of property. Not invaluable, valuable. Now we're in the world of man's fiction between value and invaluable. Is your life valuable or invaluable? Priceless or have a price on it? If you cannot comprehend what we're talking about in here, you will be mixing truth with fiction. But when you do that, you extinguish the inalienable side, because all they're going to see is that you have said, I will take responsibility and surety for the fictional part of the name. Now, the problem that we're arising out of all the information I've ever seen on the net, all the information from all the lectures, no one wants to separate and understand the difference between the given name, the Christian name, and the surname. Mainly because they're going to have to choose Christ as their surety according to Hebrews 7:22, because Christ was made surety out of a better covenant. Now, when you use the surname of another, the only one who can back up that fiction would be you, because Christ is your surety and He's your master, and He has bestowed that gift upon you, and He's given you absolution. But if you're using both, well, then you're being the surety and you're signing for the debt. And you're signing for the debtor name, not the given name at that point. But you said you'll pay for it. Now, we're going to go to a very interesting transcript. We read it back in an earlier case. I still feel sorry and empathy for the individual whose case this was, who I had told to go get the transcript because they didn't appear at the court. They made a mistake, mixed up the date on the court date, didn't show up for the appearance. And unfortunately, in that situation, it led to more complications, which means that you not showing up for the court case of what you've been charged with, you now, basically under that persona, would have to apply for the transcript in order to have the evidence to know what was proceeded on without you being there. And you'd have to reopen the case and get the transcript so you have evidence of what went on. So now you would be in knowledge of what had gone on in the proceedings so you could proceed in the case. So the individual in the aggregate, under the persona, had to go with his fictitious name and order the transcripts for what happened to the fiction in the case. But interesting information came out of this. And in the transcript, because someone had basically kept on shoving in their statement of birth record into the court, in some way implying that the court would not be able to proceed with that. Well, that would be truthfully, but that's not what they're after in the court, because the individual that was participating in the aggregate, in the social aggregate, had basically entered into an insurance scheme. Not an assurance. The assurance was done with Christ. He walked into saying he could be his own surety. And so under that, you will pay the charge for that, because you've now blasphemed Christ. They'll even swear you in because your epithet name or your surname or epithet is a fiction. It is a lie. And it is contrary to your Christian name and identifies you as someone without a covenant with the true God. Therefore, you're a pagan. Therefore, you will pay. These are things you must understand when you're participating. Now you will be judged by law, and the evidence is you're using something that belongs to another. Therefore, you will pay for the usage of it under license. You don't need a license to use your Christian name. You need a license to use a pagan name. Therefore, in the transcript, because the court seemed to have been jammed a few times based on things that were being entered in as evidence, but it was not working properly for the court to deal with it. Therefore, there was a comment made by a justice of the peace, and please listen carefully on this, because this is the only thing that's important in this transcript. And I'm not divulging the name of the individual participating in the aggregate, because that's not the purpose of this video, to chastise anybody. The purpose is to share information or share truth that came from this. Justice of the Peace commented, "There is no provision in the Canadian legal system which allows an individual to transfer his given names," that means convey, to transfer, because that's all you do in the world of the Gentiles, is to convey a pagan surname to a false title, and therefore you pay for it by being silly enough to use something that's a fiction and a lie. So the law judges you as someone who does not believe in Christ, therefore you would have to be paying your way the other way. It says, "There is no provision in the Canadian legal system which allows an individual to transfer, convey his given names to anyone, whether to a person, a corporation, or a trust. Any document purporting to achieve that goal is in and of itself invalid, and having such a document notarized does not validate the document." Now, the statement of birth, saying everything is sufficient and correct, correct can only be proper, proper cannot be common, so therefore your surname is out of the game anyways. They would have identified it as an error on the record. The only thing that occurred on that record was your given name, your Christian name. The surname is blotted out as an error.